So that's all a good thing. And thank you very much for joining us here. Give us another minute as we get ourselves together. We had a little technical faux pas for those of you who are listening. And just so that we're introducing everybody on the panel today as we talk about switching. First of all, our guest, Don Graham. Thank you very much for joining us with the on Jack and I's show, which we are almost close to a name, by the way. We were thinking maybe it would be Job Seekers Nation or Job Search Nation, which I checked, and none of those names are being used on podcasts or Twitter handles or anything like that.
So we could snatch that up.
So I should correct myself. I checked the hashtag for both of those. I didn't check this the Twitter handle, which I think was kind of moot. But I just want to be sure that people can use the hashtag. So if they want to find our content and find the stream of our content, we can use on both of those platforms. Facebook is pretty easy, and actually so is Instagram. So either one we decide. Did your staff get a chance to go through any of those yet? But by the way, Jack.
Go throughout the
well, yeah, those suggestions. I said you should pass it by your staff.
Definitely. Yeah, pretty interested. But you know what? While we're talking, I'm gonna go on GoDaddy and see if the domain name is available.
I think I checked the domain name, and it might have been cleared even. Let me go ahead and finish the introductions so we could properly do this.
We have attention deficit disorder here, Don.
Yeah, right.
I'm a psychologist. I can help.
We do this. Yeah, when we have three people,
with that? Is that
helpful? Things. So, everybody, I want you to meet Don Graham. She is actually Dr. Don on careers on Sirius XM and the Wharton School of Business for University of Pennsylvania. Did I get all that right, Dr. Don?
That sounds good.
Okay, well, yep. And also you can catch her Forbes contributing columns on Forbes.com. Just look up her name and look up Forbes, and you'll find a whole bunch of stuff. The man across from me, my partner in crime, is Jack Kelly. Recruiter.io is his place where he resides, as well as a bunch of other places. He's also a senior contributor on careers on Forbes. My name is Mark Anthony Dyson, the founder of the voice of jobseekers.com. I write all over the place. And if you find me, you'll probably find about 20, 25 places where I've written articles for. So we're just here. We're going to talk a little bit or a lot about the central themes around being a switcher and career changing with Dr. Don. And we are also, I should also mention, you're a licensed psychologist. Did I get that right? Yes.
I am.
And she is. So not only she could talk through her 25 years of recruiting, or 20 plus years of recruiting, but she can probably also psychoanalyze your job search.
But I won't.
Yes. But we're here to have a whole lot of discussion about that to help you all with your job search. And if you have any questions, feel free to put it in the thread. Also, introduce yourself, raise your hand, and we'll be glad. We'll try to answer your question between all of this discussion that we have. We know that a lot of you are just getting back from the holidays, and you're looking to get the best advice you possibly can. So here we are with some of the best minds in job search. Just want to start out a little bit talking about how really career change is really at the forefront of everybody's mind in some kind of capacity. If not just changing jobs, people are actually looking to are reading the tea leaves of their careers, and they're saying, oh, my industry may not fare well for me from where I'm at this particular time. So they're looking to change careers. And one of the things that I think we want to discuss a particular article that you have on Forbes, Don, as soon as I'm able to pull it up, because I'm here talking and also trying to get the itinerary as we get it all together, and also just trying to make sure that I can see everybody and people who are actually contributing to the conversation. I can't see them yet, so I want to be able to get their questions. But first of all, I want to ask for you, Don, are you seeing, hearing, feeling the tea leaves, taking the temperature of the room, that people are probably looking more ahead of to what's not just coming to work for the next day, but perhaps looking to change for tomorrow?
I think so. I think 2020 was a big wake up call for a lot of people who maybe had gotten into regular habits and routines and had fleeting thoughts about different things in their career. But, it's really difficult to reflect when you're taking your kids to soccer practice and maybe taking a night class and your boss is asking for this report. So these tend to be fleeting thoughts. But 2020 created a situation where we all had a stark realization that job security is a myth. Even if you are a strong performer, that's often not enough when there is a major economic shift going on. And I also think a lot of people learned that, there's a value and a briefness to life. And, am I doing what I really want to do? Or am I doing what I maybe was put on this earth to do? And so you have a couple of different things that have been impacting people, from the lack of security and the realization of that, to the intense changes that we've seen with technology and needing to be very proficient in that, to an eye-opening experience of, wow, life is short, and maybe this is the great eye-opening wake-up call for me to say it's time to do what you've always wanted to do. So yeah, I think people are really thinking about 2021 as a pivot year.
Yeah.
So, Don, because
go ahead, Jack.
Personally and professionally, I've heard so many people articulate what you just mentioned, is that they start to, and maybe also because they have a bit more time at home and they're not having the commute and all that, thinking, do I want to do this for the next 5, 10, 20 years? Even though I know I can make a good living and so on, but is this all there is to it? That's a big thing. I mean, what would you say to people who want to do it? Because it sounds good to say, hey, I want to switch, and I hate being filled in the gap, whatever they're doing, but I want to do something else. But the reality is, maybe they're going to have to start all over again. They're not going to get as much money. But what kind of advice would you give to people who are going through that mindset of, what do I do next? Do I want to keep doing this, or want to leave, so that they don't act impulsively and they really think it through?
Yeah, I think that that more often what happens is that people have this idea and they get really inspired and they start visualizing it and jotting down ideas, but then humans weigh losses more than they weigh gains. So this idea of loss aversion, which I talk about in my book, starts creeping in around exactly what you said, Jack, which is, oh, I'm going to be paid less, or, oh, maybe this is more expensive than I thought, or, oh, I don't really have the skill set, so I might have to take a level or two down. And those things are really what get in the way of us making that move. So, or even, I don't know even how to do this. Like I can see myself doing it, but I don't know the steps, and it just looks like too big of a mountain to climb. So what I would encourage people to do is take bite-sized steps, because sometimes what you envision as your dream, when you dig beneath the surface, it may not be as interesting as you thought, but it's good to take these sort of baby steps to figure it out before you take that big leap, because more often than not, what happens when you do that, when you kind of just do one thing each day to get closer to your dream, is that if you determine that's not the right avenue for you, you often find lots of avenues that are the right one for you that maybe don't require a lot of sacrifices. So I would say, if you have that dream out there, kind of work backwards. Say, what is one thing I can do today to learn more about this, or to understand this better, or to see what this is really like, and take those steps. And as you move forward, I always say clarity comes through action. You'll meet people, you'll experience things that tell you, yes, I'm on the right track, or no, this isn't the right track, but I didn't even know about this track, and I'm going to explore this track now. So I think you can't look at it as I'm going to make this happen by tomorrow. I think you have to look at it as maybe a 1-year process, maybe a 2-year process, but you need to ask yourself, if in 5 years you're going to regret not having started down this path, then you need to do it. You need to start on that path.
It's really smart advice, because I think you're right. I think most people, I don't know what to say most, but a lot of people, they're going to just jump into the deep end of the pool. I can't take it anymore. I don't want to keep doing this. and I want to do such and such, and jump into it. And they realize after they jump into it, like, oh my God, what did I get myself into? And then, as a recruiter, then you'll see those resumes, because then they'll stay, they'll leave again. And then it gets harder to get a job because like this, what's up with this person? They can't hold on to a job. But how would it work though? Because if you want to kind of pivot, like you're saying, and take small steps, does that mean like maybe take a contract role doing something, or like how would you do that logistically?
Yeah, I think it depends on how big of a switch you're looking to make, what resources you have available, and how if you're looking to make, for example, a major switch, then it might take a lot longer and you might have a lot more steps than if you're looking to make a minor switch. So I think you really have to evaluate three things every time you're thinking through this process. First is, what are my interests? And my favorite question around that are, what problems do I want to solve in the market right now? Because it also addresses something else that's important, which is the market, the economy. What are people getting paid to do? Because if you are really interested in something, but nobody's getting paid to do it because it's not a need, then that's not probably going to be very viable. And then what are my skills? And where are my gaps? And I think when you look at these three things, you start to get clues about where you get started. So for some people, it may be that I've seen this job on TV, or I've heard a friend do it, but it sounds really interesting, but I don't really know. So maybe it's shadowing to find out, is this job really as interesting as I thought? For some, you may be reading job ads online and realizing, wow, I only have 50% of the skills that they're looking for. So that, the question is that real? Can you talk to people? Do you really need all of these skills, or what are the core ones? And what do you have that's transferable, and what do you need to close the gap on? And how do you do that? Sometimes it's something you can gain through an online training. Other times you might have to get more, create an internship or apprenticeship for yourself. So I think you really have to explore. One of the reasons that people don't do this is because they say, well, I don't know how, there's no roadmap, which is exactly why I wrote Switchers, because I'm like, okay, if you have a goal and you don't know how to get there, and you're following traditional advice, then it gets really demoralizing, because traditional advice doesn't really teach you how to make a switch. It teaches you how to figure out what you want to do, and then, based on what you already are doing, and to take that next step. But what I want to help people do is say, let me inventory my skills. Let me define my interests in line with what's going on in the market. And now give me that roadmap to help me rebrand myself and close my gaps and get in front of the decision makers and convince them that I can do the job, because that's really the hard part there. Most of us have a lot of transferable skills. Most of us can get access to close those gaps in some meaningful way, but a lot of people just don't know what those steps are.
Well, those are all great particular points, and I think one of the things I think you mentioned was about apprenticeships. And if I'm not mistaken, you had a show recently, Dawn, about not recently, maybe in the past year or two, about apprenticeships and how really it is. As much in the career space, we tend to give a lot of broad stroke advice that people don't understand that they need to tune into their own industries on how to navigate those. Because I tell you, I look at this comment from Tony Williams. Thanks for joining us. He says military veterans find it difficult to transition, identifying their new careers. Military are also changing cultures, which makes it more difficult. And he brings up a pretty solid point, because the federal government system is a whole lot different than the civilian and the private sectors. And really, when you talk about apprenticeships, you talk about trades and careers that are related, and talk about IT, they're a whole lot different to navigate. And all that to say is that when people hear advice, they need to be taken in consideration. Okay, I need to go investigate, not just try to apply the first thing that they hear to their job search. Which, really, I think there are some people who are able to do it. And then there's some people who are just looking for any type of help right now, looking to put their thumb in the wall to stop the flooding, or to patch the bleeding, or whatever they are in their situations. So I think a show like this is good and podcasts and your show and wherever, instead of hearing the 3 minutes or 5 minutes advice they might hear in mainstream media, or they might hear update or see one about updates, that they're going to look and get it all, when really it really takes some time to deeply dive into it. And for most job seekers, really it takes about a year to even just I won't say everybody, but for a lot of them, it takes a while for them to just say, okay, let me make this first step or two to make this change happen.
Yeah, and I like the word you used, Mark, investigate, because I think when we get the idea and we feel very excited, we just want to kind of dive in. It's the, oh, I got this bookshelf from IKEA, I don't need to read the instructions, I got this. But that investigating part is really valuable, because you start to learn, is this everything I thought it would be? Are there hidden hurdles that I'm not aware of because I'm looking from the outside in? And then I also think something that people also look for is, once they've determined this is for me, they look for somebody to choose them. They look for, they apply online and they want somebody to select them. And I think we need to shift and start being less reactive and more proactive. And I think we need to create our own opportunities. And a lot of people hear that and say, oh, well, that sounds easy, right? But actually, it can be, when you're a switcher, easier to start creating your own opportunities than to react to job ads that are now getting 200, 300, 400 applicants, some who may have a traditional background. And it may not be an all in one shot, but it might just be, as you mentioned, Jack, creating a side gig or getting contract work or volunteering for an organization to apply a skill that you've learned. And yes, it takes longer. And I'll tell people that every time. Switchers gives you a roadmap, but it is not the fast route. It is the route that works. And unfortunately, that can take a lot of time and investment. There is a lot of ambiguity still within that. And I think that's part of the process, is recognizing that you want this goal badly enough to go through those steps and to do it right. And sometimes that means there's not an easy answer. It's not just about, oh, I'm going to go back to school, or I'm going to, apply and somebody's going to hire me and train me. That's probably not going to happen. So you need to craft your own path. And I think that's the part that helps people to be really successful.
Jack, what are your thoughts?
It's interesting. This is such great advice. And if I could, to be very transparent, I'm kind of going through this myself right now, where for probably almost 25 years, as a recruiter, CEO of a recruiting firm, that's my life. And then that's 9 months ago, 8 months, whatever, when pandemic started, I started Recruiter, which is, a platform to help people, give them advice, guidance, hold their hand, have meetups to commiserate with each other. And I had no idea what I'm doing. I have a team around me, but I'm not a tech person. I'm actually not very even comfortable with technology, but, surround myself with really smart, good people, and kind of say, and it's rough because I can empathize, like when you're talking about, there's no path. It's like, there's not a handbook where you could look, okay, now you do this, now you do this, now you do this, and 2 + 2 is 4. And you find out it's not like that at all. You think something's going to work and it's just terrible. You think something's not such a great idea and people love it. And so really, it was an eye-opening thing, because doing something for so long and knowing how it works, because if you're in a certain career, you kind of know like how it all flows. But when you do something different, you have no idea. You have no idea you're wasting your time or not. So I could see for someone making that pivot to keep in mind, yeah, it's going to be you ever see those pictures where they say success and, to people who don't go through it, it's like a straight line, but then the other picture would be like a little squiggly line, all messy. So that's kind of what it feels like. It's all messy. And I'm also doing this again, where I found out that, just like yourself, writing as kind of a byproduct of your main profession, but then I found out I really enjoy doing it. So I'm kind of looking into how can I really do a newsletter and blog that would be about helping people with their careers, with their job, but then also bigger news and so on. But once again, it's like you're going into this uncharted territory. And some days, and I'll be really honest, some days I'm like, yeah, this is great. Other days I'm like, what am I doing? What did I do? Am I out of my mind? So for people who are watching this, maybe it helps, even though it's in a different kind of field. It's one of those things where you have to be prepared to really just bump into brick walls. You're going to get a lot of rejection, a lot of failure, a lot of everything. And then you learn a lot too. And then you get better at it. So it's a very, so going through it, I can see it's something that's really worthwhile. And you pointed out, Dawn, is that as you're doing it, you find out you learn a whole lot of other things. Mm-hmm. It opens up other doors where, like, for instance, these LinkedIn Lives, I kind of fell into it through Mark, but if it wasn't for me writing and doing stuff, I never would have known who Mark was. You know what I mean? Like, and I find out in these LinkedIn Lives, I really love it because bringing on people like you who just give so much great information. It's fantastic for job seekers, and selfishly, it's great because like you learn so much. So like as you're going through it, and I really liked how you're saying that as you take every step, you're going to learn new things along the way, and you may kind of veer off that path. So maybe you had a certain thing in mind. Tell me if this makes sense to you. You may have had this goal, but as you're doing it, you learn, wait, I really like this part much more. Or people notice you doing this part, and then all of a sudden they're like, hey, Don, we want you to work here doing this because we really like what you're doing. Does it make sense?
It's
Go
really
ahead,
true. I think a lot of, I like reading about how businesses got started. And if you read a lot of businesses didn't look anything like they look now, but I think, they started off with something completely different, yes. But one little piece of it took off and became really successful. And that wasn't even what the founder was interested in. And I think we fool ourselves when we look at the end product and just say, wow, these people had their stuff together, and we forget that they went through all of those hurdles, or that there was a major detour that led. I mean, the reason I'm in career management is because I got laid off from Arthur Andersen 20 years ago when Enron happened, which I thought was the end of my career as I know it, but it actually became the beginning of what my career would become. And so it's really difficult to know in that moment. And I think you do have to go into it, Jack, with an open mind of, do something every day. And I tell people this all the time, take one step every day and the next step will become clear. And even if you're not sure, take the step. There will be steps that are missteps, but those often lead to new ideas. And so I think your story makes a lot of sense. And yes, those squiggly lines, we're all stuck somewhere in there. I don't think we ever get to the end point.
I think, I'm so glad you're bringing it up, Don, because this is something people don't talk about. When you think of success, most people think, you look at whether it's a Jeff Bezos or someone at a much level, and they just feel they fell into it, or they were lucky, or they had wealthy parents, but a lot of times they don't realize what it took to get there. And it wasn't an easy route. The same thing with jobs. It's not easy for a lot of people. It's a lot of just hitting your head against the wall.
There's a Forbes article that Dawn wrote, and actually some of her points are already inferred in the sense that you can't take your eyes off the ball anymore. And I think people want to get a career so they can get settled and get comfortable, where really your career now is making sure you keep your eyes on the ball and to never be comfortable again, because there's just so much weighing on your ability to navigate and to keep a string of opportunities coming. Nobody, even if you can afford to take time off, nobody wants to end up in the land of uncertainty. So I think that's very important. I think in that article you said, Dawn, how your tenure in jobs are going to be much shorter. We were thinking, I think, when the last economic downturn, that going from 30 to 10 is more realistically as far as a tenure. Now 10 years is kind of a long time too, and I've been thinking that for a long time, as I've seen that the job seekers who are more successful are ready to jump at any particular point, no matter when an economic downturn or an industry crash actually happens, that they're ready to make those pivots because they're thinking in those terms already.
Mm-hmm. Mark, I really like what you're saying. You have a really great point there, is that it is a scary point too, is that things are changing so quickly that you always have to keep your eyes open. And I know in the past you'd say, you have to wear your job search jacket or words to that effect all the time, meaning constantly be vigilant. Mm-hmm. At the same time, it's a little scary. And Don, as the doctor in the room here, how would you tell to balance that? Because in one way, it's, kind of liberating, right? If like people who are watching this now or watch it when, after we record it and repost it on different social media, it's like the idea of like, yeah, I don't have to stay being a tax accountant that I hate. I could take those skills and try to transfer over, and you feel that excitement. But then also you have that fear of like, oh my God, what if I don't succeed? What's my family going to think? What are my friends going to think? Oh no. How would you, I don't want to put you on the spot. Like, how would you counsel someone to deal with it? Because those are real fears. Those are real things going on.
Yeah, I think fear is the basis for pretty much all of our decisions in life, whether it's to do something or to not do something. And so I think first and foremost, we have to understand what our fears are. For some people, it's security. I mean, we all have our own set of values, and we all have our own set of things that are important to us and priorities for us. And I think we really need to stop, and this is such a great time of year to do it right in the new year, and say, what's important to me? What am I willing to sacrifice? What am I not willing to sacrifice? So what's my non-negotiables? Because I think when we can start to parse those out, we can start to see how our fears impact our decisions, our decisions to do something or to not do something. And then we can start to dissect if those fears are legitimate or if those are just cognitive distortions and we're maybe catastrophizing because that's a defense mechanism that we use. So not to get into more psychobabble, but
can I tell you, I think that's good. Seriously, I think that's helpful because, for 20 plus years dealing with job seekers, I could tell, and I'm not a PhD like yourself, but there's sometimes these underlying issues that they're dealing with that's really holding them back. Like I'll say in a very unscientific way, it's like they're shooting themselves in the foot all the time. And it almost feels like they need some outside advice to see like, why are you doing that? Like, why are you, sabotaging your own career, your own job search?
Well, it's interesting. Part of the reason I became a psychologist, obviously I wanted to help people, but I always had an interesting career. But what I realized early on was I started my career work in outplacement, which is a very difficult time for people. I mean, I've been laid off twice, and that is probably one of the most difficult times because your identity is stripped away, and often it's out of left field, and you have all these concerns. But what I realized early on when I did my coaching is that a lot of people come or put their careers as the reason they're getting coaching. But when you dig down, their career is just a maybe safe topic to talk about. But what really is going on is something underlying, a fear that has nothing to do with their career, but is manifesting in their career. And so when you start to dig beneath it, you realize that yes, their career is a symptom of it, but it's not the root cause. And if you can address that root cause, then a lot of those blockages that are getting in the way of the career actually clear out. So I do find that there's a very, very, very close tie between, fears and, bigger picture and career. And so I use that a lot in my work to help people sort of get past those hurdles, because when they realize, wow, it's really not my job so much as my worry that I'm not going to be able to take care of my family, then you can start to make decisions based on what's reality versus what's created in your head.
I think that
take that. Are they comfortable when you start kind of analyzing them a little bit, or there's pushback?
I think one of the things I've learned is about timing, and it's about understanding the person first. There's certainly people who are not open to that, and it takes a lot more time to get to that level. But the method that I like to use is I like to use the Socratic Method. I like to ask questions to help them come to their own conclusions. And I think a lot more people are comfortable with that because they start to realize, wow, now that I'm saying this out loud, I realize that it's more this fear than my career. And I'm like, wow, maybe you're right. But
you're not telling them what it is. By asking the questions, they're coming to their own conclusion.
Mm-hmm.
I think in part too is that today's career coach it might be more advantageous if they were more of a holistic practitioner in some
right?
sense.
It sounds that way, Mark, right?
Because now we're having not only to think about our careers, but we have to think about careers and family. We can't just think about our careers as far as where we're going to go, but also how it may affect our elderly parents and how we're dealing with yet another strain of this virus. All those things are coming into play now, and you have working mothers who are actually having to struggle more than anybody else in this pandemic. The ones who are naturally the ones who are the caretakers who are have to leave their full-time job and perhaps even take a part-time job. And I think shout out to Sherry Johnston yesterday, who brought up a great point in a post on LinkedIn saying how that the world for part-time work in a lot of industries is scarce or non-existent. So now you have this whole thing to where you will have to create what I've said before about creating a demand for your work, even if it's part-time, not just you creating your own career. That's a part of it, but now you have to create demand for it because you want people to want that. And ultimately, it's not the fact that I can apply to a job and get it based on my initiation, but the fact that you can attract an employer who wants your work and willing to work with you on your particular terms. So I think, it's not only what Don said as far as creating opportunities and what you've said in the past, Jack, but it's also the demand that your work is going to be so vital to the ecosystem in your industry that people are going to want you at whatever cost you are going to come at. And that's just another part of that shift I think we're seeing lately in the past couple of years, to where now you can be more control of not just for where you go, for who comes to you, who you're willing to work with.
So, Mark, that's really things that you're talking about coincide with what Dr. Don was saying. I wonder, for the people who are watching this, are there resources? Because Mark was walking through, hey, you're a mom with young kids, juggling your career, have a spouse, that person's juggling their careers. You have all the stress. Maybe someone lost their job. Maybe, as Mark was saying, maybe taking care of a sick relative. That's a lot of things you're carrying around on top of maybe trying to, either get a job, keep your job, advance. Are there places people could go to get that, not just the career help, but that mental health help?
Yeah, I think right now they're very separate as far as I've seen. You go for career help or you go for mental health. And so it would be, I think mental health has come a long way. I think a lot more people, especially with social media, you see a lot of celebrities being very open about it. And, I think that's a good thing, because I think we do need to be more open about it and not kind of shove it down in the corner and pretend it's not there. And I think even in a job search, as you both have helped a lot of people, that emotions play a huge part in the whole process of that roller coaster of getting an interview, getting called, and then getting ghosted. And, what does that mean? And of course, we apply that to ourselves and say, there must be something wrong with me. And that can spiral. So I think right now, one of the things that if somebody comes to me and I determine that the real core of what they're struggling with is something that needs to be or should be handled by somebody who is practicing as a mental health professional, I will let people know that, it's going to be very beneficial to your career and your job search if you address this problem first, because otherwise it's going to come out in your interview. It's going to come out when you're networking, and people are going to see it's a red flag and not know exactly what it is, but they're going to be hesitant to move you forward in the process because they're unsure. So I think right now, unfortunately, those two things seem to be very separate, and you have to address one and then the other.
Now, important, do you do both of it, or you're more the career coaching type and then the mental health?
I'm not a practicing psychologist at Wharton, and there's, obviously a lot of legal reasons for that. It's a very different legal process to tell somebody they're a client of yours in a psychology
Yeah.
than a career coach, and obviously different regulations through the APA. So no, I don't practice as a psychologist at Wharton, but I think a lot of the skills you learn as you, go through that training come in handy as a coach, very much so.
It's interesting. We talked a little bit before we went live, is that what I'm worried about for people is that you have, because for so many people, 2020 was so horrendous, and it's a spectrum of being just awful to, all right, just pretty bad, and everything in between. And you go to 2021, and I think some people will be like, all right, new year, it's going to be different. Now I'm going to get that job. It's January, the jobs come in, recruiting starts. And then before you know it, it's mid-January, late January, February. And then you're like, oh no. And to manage expectations for people, I could see them getting really despondent. Particularly, there's so many long-term unemployed people that, what would you say to folks just to kind of keep them going? You know what I mean? And not just throw in the towel and say,
yeah, I feel like I was one of those people who were saying, once I turn the page on the calendar, everything's going to be different. And I knew deep down that wasn't the case, but I still think
I can't take it anymore. I give up.
Yeah, flipping that page was really, really inspiring. And I think, but I think we go through this every year. We a lot of people do New Year's resolutions, and the data on that is that they mostly fizzle out by somewhere around mid-February. And so I think one of the things that really helps people to be successful that a lot of people don't do up front is plan to fail. And I know that sounds really strange, but any process you go through is going to have unexpected hurdles. It's going to have things that don't turn out. It's going to have, your life is going to have something kind of crash in that you didn't see coming. And I usually tell people, plan 30% extra time for things you didn't see coming, or plan for 20% of the things that you're doing to not work. And when you start to kind of incorporate this and you expect it, you even have it on your checklist, and you say, okay, I've 2 things aren't going to work this week. It's on my checklist. When that first one doesn't work, you check it off and you say, okay, well, that's on my checklist. And then when the next one happens, or maybe it doesn't, and you say, wow, this is a great week. Only 10% of things didn't work out. It's just a different mindset going into it, thinking that, it's reality that there are things that are not going to go well. Creates a situation where it's not devastating. It's not unexpected. When you expect it, then, you kind of can roll with the flow. So I think that's one of the things. And I would say anybody who's in a job search, expect that things will get better, but probably not right away. And it probably will take some time for companies, and it might get worse before it gets better, sadly. But I think not catastrophizing and not kind of saying, well, this is it, but recognizing that everything's impermanent, and because it's not good today doesn't mean it's not going to be good tomorrow. Or because it's good tomorrow doesn't mean it's going to keep moving in that direction, that everything's going to, what goes up must come down, but it'll go back up. So I think that's one of the things that I've seen really help people.
It's such great advice, because, it's really about managing expectations. Like, I try to do that. If, let's say, whether I'm writing for Forbes, writing for my own blog, or just advising job seekers, if anything, I always err on the side of being more negative. So then I'll get beat up by people like, why are you so negative? Why are you down on it? You should be more optimistic about it. But really, I'm preparing them exactly what you're saying. So let's say, if you're saying everything's gonna be great, you're gonna get that job, don't worry, you got it. And then you hit those roadblocks and then you fall apart. But if you know ahead of time, all right, I'm gonna hit these roadblocks, like you said, you get 2 things. When it happens, you're like, oh, okay, Dawn said that was gonna happen, it happened, okay. So you don't take it to heart. He's like, oh, all right, she told me it's gonna happen. Oh, here's the second one, it happened, all right. And maybe there's a third, she didn't mention it, but that makes sense. And all of a sudden, the way you look at things are so different. It doesn't really knock you flat, because you're like, oh, okay, I was ready for it. Whereas if you just think, hey, I'm going to go and everything's going to work my way, and then it goes wrong, that's where I think you kind of buckle. So I think that's really good advice for people, just to know going into it, it's going to happen. You're going to fail. You're going to, hit into dead ends. And that's just part of the game.
I'm like you, Jack. I go into everything saying this is going to be a disaster. This is going to work. And, my family's like, why do you always do that? I'm like, I don't know, but I think to your point, it makes me feel better when
Because then if it doesn't, you're like, yes. Because like, let's say it doesn't, then you're all like pumped up. You're like, this is great. I'm amazing. This didn't happen. And if it does happen, you're like, oh, okay, it was supposed to happen. All right.
That might work for some people, but
Yeah.
I think ultimately what people that gets exhausting when you've been unemployed for several months. You're going, oh, nothing will ever probably ever work. But I think the thing that people will need to start preparing themselves for is a certain mindset that's going to be sustainable for long periods of time, and having to renew it along the way. I think people are looking for, sometimes you have to even get rid of certain parts of it for new parts to grow, like a plant. You weed you cut off the stems of the bad parts so that new parts can grow and make the whole thing look best. And I think that's where a lot of people will need to learn that as a skill, not just something to just survive off of. Because Jack, I say this all the time, that job search is a lifestyle. It's got to be something that you've got to be able to sustain for a long time. You can't go into a career and say, oh, I've arrived, I got this, now I can relax and start to focus. Now it's like you've got to focus on everything. You may not be able to focus on everything at 100%. Maybe there needs to be 100% focus in these areas and maybe 50% at others. But whatever that person particularly decides, that's going to make all the difference in the world to sustaining a job search. Now, I want to do is go back to a question that Christine has, and thanks for joining us. How do you balance managing expectations without teetering the line of manifesting that negativity? It kind of teeters on what I was talking about, managing those expectations. Yeah, it's not going to be easy because there's some people going on almost a year now of unemployment. Because there's some people who just got laid off because of the first of the year last year, and COVID didn't help their search, because some people actually stopped in the middle of the interview process and was told it's not going to be continued because of the shutdown and things turning into remote. Dawn, your thoughts?
Yeah, I think it's important to first off know yourself, and I think a stat I heard somewhere during my training was that about 4 days a month we all feel like really unmotivated and depressed, and that was really helpful to me, because it's true, there are days when I just feel like, what am I doing, and I just don't even want to do anything anymore, and I'm over this. But when I've learned that stat, I realized, okay, that's one of my 4 days. But I think if you start seeing those 4 days a month become 2 weeks or longer, I think you need to address that, because I think these long-term unemployments do create situations where people, have extreme anxiety, they have extreme depression, they turn to distraction techniques, whether it's drinking or other things that might be destructive to themselves. And it becomes a spiral that's really difficult to get out of. And so those 4 days a month become, maybe it's only 4 days a month that you actually feel some motivation. And that's when, you need to reach out and get help and support. And I know that's something that's really difficult for people to do, one, with their careers, but certainly two, with something that they view as mental health, because there is still a stigma around it. But I do encourage you, if you've hit that place, I do encourage you to get support, because it's really, really difficult to come out of that hole alone without the support. And it can be friends, it could be family, it could be your local congregation or community resources. There are a lot of low cost and free resources out there, because mental health has become so impacted by the challenges that people are experiencing because of COVID. So I think that's first and foremost. You have to recognize, is my negativity gone to the point where I need to get some serious support? And then the other thing I would say, if you're not there, but you're also not seeing results, and you keep trying, I would ask you, do something different. And advice that I give to people is do the opposite of what everyone else is doing, especially if what you've been doing is not working. So if you're applying online, for example, and you're not getting responses, then what if you did something different? And it can really be anything. I mean, and before people jump on and say that would never work, I think when you start to do something different, you start to get new ideas. What if you just showed up to a business and said, look, I'm looking for work. I can work anytime. I know that you don't have a sign in your window, but here's the situation. And you start doing that. Maybe it works, maybe it doesn't. Or what if you start talking to your friends, or you go to a job search meeting that you've never been to, or just start doing these things that maybe even feel a little bit crazy or out there. But when you start doing these things, you're going to be surprised at the different results you get and the different ideas you get. So if what you're doing isn't working, start thinking, what is no one else doing? And can I start doing that?
I think all that is very excellent. Jack, go ahead.
Yeah, so because it's on a few levels, it makes so much sense too, because I hear from job seekers all the time where how many times can I fill out this long glitchy application, submit it, goes into the black hole of the corporation, you don't know what's going on, and you just feel so despondent. But if you say, you know what, I've been trying, it's not working, let me do something different, let me figure out another path. And if anything, it just changes your mind a little bit. Like, all right, I'm not doing the same old, because no one wants to do the same thing every day. It's like Groundhog's Day. Like every day it's the same. So if you switch it up, imagine doing like not only everything you're saying, but you just feel a little better. Like, okay, this is different. This is something, I'm not doing the same thing again.
It's really true. It's a trick. I wouldn't say trick, technique maybe is a better word, but that we used both in psychology when I was a practicing psychologist, but I also use it in when somebody's kind of feeling unmotivated or stuck. I say, do one thing differently every day. Doesn't matter what it is. It's just about doing one thing differently. So maybe you brush your teeth with your non-dominant hand. Maybe you take a different route to work. Maybe you watch a different news channel or listen to a different radio show, or maybe you get something different at Starbucks or whatever your routine, just one thing. Maybe you sit at a different place at the kitchen table. One thing every day. And the reason it doesn't matter is because it's not really about the activity. It's really about the getting your brain trained to step away from habits and these cycles that go in and kind of makes your brain pay attention. We get so kind of into our routines that our brains just kind of go and it helps us be efficient, but it takes us out of that creativity mode. So when you sit at a different place at the table or you watch a different news show, your brain now has to pay attention a little bit more because it's not dealing with what it's used to dealing with. So inevitably you start getting new ideas, or you start seeing things from a different perspective, or you walk past something that you've never walked past before that gives you an idea, or you meet somebody you wouldn't have met otherwise. And so I think this is a really helpful trick for people who are stuck, because inevitably when you do this, it could take an hour, it could take 3 seconds. It doesn't matter. It could cost money. It doesn't matter. It just gets your brain into this or out of this kind of cycle and noticing things it doesn't normally notice.
Yeah, I think there's something to be said about not just people who are unemployed, but people who are underemployed too. And I think people who are underemployed often have even a greater challenge because they're thinking their worth is now downgraded and that they're even stuck in that particular position. And I think the mindset and doing something different is something that might be a little bit temporary fix, but I think to even greater degree that that now that they have this, that some, not all, but some have been looking for a long time to find something that is what they're used to be, that maybe there's some exhaustion that comes into play. And I've said before, I think it was an article on recruiter.com. I wrote how really mental health is the new dental health, in the sense that, people people will take or leave because of fear of who's the actual practitioner. Or nobody likes to hear the whir of a drill, and nobody likes the idea of having their privacy being invaded or being loosened to have better health. But I think ultimately we'll all need to overcome those fears and accept that as something else that we need to manage along with our lives to make our careers a lot better. Jack, your thoughts? You're on mute, Jack.
Oh, there. I think that was a phrase for 2020, right?
You're right.
So, what would you say to job seekers who are doing what everyone tells, the usual what to do? Mark yourself on LinkedIn, update your resume, all that kind of stuff. To just spice it up, change it up. Are there things that maybe you could say, hey, maybe do this or that to kind of help them out?
Yeah, so I think those things are now the foundation that are required. So yes, you have to be on LinkedIn. You have to have an updated profile that shows your brand and what you bring to the market. But these are now baseline. These are not differentiators anymore, especially in 2021. So I think two things that really, in addition to kind of building your skills, two things that really matter are making sure your brand is very targeted and direct and shows your audience exactly how you solve their problems and is visible. But the other part is building that network. And I know everybody rolls their eyes when they hear that point. But the fact is if you look around, if your resume is not getting looked at in any of the jobs you're applying to online, I can guarantee if somebody inside the organization or somebody who knows the hiring manager, even if they don't work there, puts that resume in front of them, you're going to get one step closer. You're going to get that resume looked at. So I think one of the goals for everybody this year should be building a network. And that doesn't have to be reaching out to strangers. It could actually, I look at network as two things. I call it creating ambassadors in my book. And the two things that are necessary for it to be effective are, one, people need to be willing to spend their social capital on you. So they need to be able to trust you in a way that opens them to refer you or to introduce you to people in their network. And two, they have to know what your brand value is. And I find that many people have a very robust network in the sense that they have a lot of people who like them and are willing to spend their social capital, whether they're friends, neighbors, community, family, but they often don't have the second part. So those people who are closest to us and want to see us succeed often don't know what our goals are. They don't know what companies we're looking at. They don't know what we offer. Maybe they know we work in IT, but they don't know specifically what that means. And so I think we miss out on a really, really big opportunity when we're not sharing our professional goals and being very specific with our friends, family, neighbors about how they can help us, because these people want to help us, but oftentimes, whether it's shame or just you don't want to talk about your job, you want to kind of relax, these things get in the way. We never actually share those goals, which means we never get perhaps a connection or an introduction that maybe is right down the hall.
That's so on target. It makes so much sense. And I'll see that oftentimes where if you look on LinkedIn, you have that banner, open to work. But it's very rare someone's going to say, I'm open to work, but here's what I've done. Here's what I'm looking to do. Here are the kind of companies I'd like to get in front of, and so on, so that the person who's viewing is like, oh, okay, Mark is looking for such and such. I can help him. Same thing. If you're not going to tell people, here's what I need for you to help me, how can they help you? So you're right. You have to get at, not only have that network, but you have to really make sure they understand who you are, what you do. And Mark, Doug, you probably see this all the time. How many times, do you find out, you speak to people and they can't articulate what they do, or you ask, I find this with my kids, let's say, hey, what is that such, because I'm a nosy person. So I'm hey, what does that person's parents do? And then they're I don't know what my parents do. How do you not know what your mom or dad does for a living? And people don't,
Their
a lot of people aren't
spouses,
really good.
their
I'm sorry.
spouses, they're very vague about what their spouse does. I mean, that's a reality. I think they're thinking, well, as long as the check comes in, and I can't detect any immediate high crimes being done, that it's okay. But there's a lot of times I've gone in the past when I was taking clients, that spouses didn't even know fully what that person did. In fact, I knew more what their spouse did than the other spouse did, and I think that's because we've taken, for some degree, we've taken for granted that because somebody's getting a check, that they're being fulfilled and that they're going to continue getting a check. When the other spouse really feels like they're falling apart, it seems that the check is the only thing that they keep existing. And there's all kinds of dynamics to go.
Well, could it be this too, Mark?
I'm
I
not,
find out.
I'm not the psychologist here,
But could it be this? This is a Dr. Don issue, which is like a general. Like I find out a lot of times what happens if between your spouse or your close friends or family, when you start talking about work, you can see them completely glaze over. And
Yeah.
I wonder if it's then you realize, all right, I'm going to stop talking about it because no one really cares. And I'll find this out as a recruiter. It's hilarious. I wonder if you guys see this too, is that you'll have someone who's telling you, I'll be on the phone with them and talking about what they do. And I'm listening. And then there'll be this awkward pause and they say, Jack, are you there? I'm like, yeah, I'm just listening. And they're not used to somebody actually listening when they're talking about work and what they do, that they're just shocked. Like, oh, this guy's actually listening and hearing what I'm trying to say and what I'm talking about. Wow, this is different. So I wonder if that's too, that, people feel like, okay, I'm going to be a blowhard if I keep talking about what I do. So I'm not going to push too much. So what do you think? I don't know.
I think the onus though is on the job seeker or the person to have a goal. Like I would ask the people who are watching right now, if somebody asks you right this second, tell me one goal you have for 2021. And I'm talking about specific. I'm not saying get a job. I'm talking, I would like to work in marketing as an analyst in these 3 companies. I'm talking a specific goal. We have to be able to answer those questions specifically because people want to help. But when you just say, get a job or get a job in IT or get a job in marketing, we're making it really hard for somebody to help us, especially if they don't know a lot about that. But when we say, well, here are the 3 companies I'm looking at. If you know anyone who works there in any capacity, it would be really helpful to meet them. Now somebody can actually attach to something and help you. But, if you don't have a goal, and it doesn't even have to be a goal to get a job. I mean, I remember somebody asking that question a few years ago, what's your goal for this year? I'm like, this year, I'd really like to do a TEDx talk. And she's like, I can help you with that. But if I didn't have that goal and just said, I don't know, I want to, maybe do more speaking, I've given her nothing to work with. So I think this is where we as job seekers or people who are looking to make a switch need to take the onus on and say, I need to craft an answer that somebody who may be outside of my profession or doesn't know, what a programmer does can actually help me. And I need to tailor that to each person. So maybe, for your elderly aunt who doesn't know a lot about IT, but, has a lot of neighbors and is very involved in her community, you could say, hey, I know you're very involved in your community. I'm wondering if you've worked with anybody who's worked at these 2 companies, because there's, a lot of people in your area tend to do that. Now that's something she might be able to help with. So we, as the askers, need to get very specific about what we want. And I think a good way to open that conversation is to ask them, hey, what are your goals for this year? And maybe they don't have a clear answer, but then you share yours and now you're helping people. And I fully believe that job searches are a social activity. We have just made them very individual because of shame, embarrassment, distraction. So we need to get out of that for 2021. Everybody needs to get out of that for 2021.
Yeah.
This goes back to what you mentioned earlier about really just being bold and aggressive. And I think, in my opinion, that's really what it's going to take going into this new year, because we're still going to, it's going to take a while till everyone gets the vaccine. And in my opinion, you can see they're going to push the goalpost back again till X amount of percentage get vaccine. And then it's still going to take a while. So this is going to be kind of this Tough Mudder, decathlon, marathon still going on. But to stand out, as you mentioned at the beginning of the conversation now, it's like, yeah, you got to get out there. You got to get out there. You have to have your network, but then you have to, like you said, let them know what you want and make sure they know what you want. Make sure they can help you out. And then, like you said, even before, like, hey, even if you want to go to a company, old school, and go in there and say, hey, knock on the door. Hey, I would love to work here. Who can I talk to? Just to do whatever it takes to mix it up and get noticed. Because if you don't, there's just too many people out there right now who are looking, and there's just too much other stuff people are dealing with. So you have to work through. So I think that's good advice, Don. I think that's really.
I think as well, Jack. I think you're right, and you've said that in prior shows that people need to be bold and not to cringe at the word aggressive. But I think, it
is a little cringy at times. It is. But it does.
I understand what you're saying. I understand what you're saying. But it for people to do that and be successful at it, they have to be really clear on what they want. And I think ultimately, if more specific you are, your boldness will work. If you're bold and vague, then you're annoying.
And that's it. You're right. It's a combination. You have to have all those elements.
You have to be very clear on what you want, and that's got to start at the beginning of your job search, is as close to the beginning as possible. Maybe you need to start the road at some particular point just to get started. But I think the clearer you are at the beginning, your job search will also become a lot shorter, because you're asked a lot more targeted and more specific, and you're giving people a lot more to work with than to just generally say, well, I need a speaking gig. And say, no, I need a speaking gig in this industry at these particular schools. Well, I may not know these schools, but I know these schools. That really helps to help that person make a pivot for you, and so they can advocate for you. Because in a job search, everybody needs an advocate. Even when you're an entrepreneur, everybody needs help and needs some assistance and needs partnerships. And that's what ultimately it comes down to, is being able to put yourself in position so people can easily help you and give them that framework where they can step in and also advocate for you if you need so. So I think we've come to our hour.
That went quickly, huh?
How great that was. Great discussion. Dawn, we'll start with you. If people want to engage more of a conversation with you or find out where you're providing content at, where should they go?
Yeah, so you can definitely find me on LinkedIn. If you reach out, definitely send a personalized message so I know where you heard me. Of course, I have a website, drdononcareers.com, and I'm also on Twitter at Dr. Dawn Graham. So any of those places, you will find out about my articles, my radio show, book, and everything else is somewhere on those pages.
Yes, and Switchers is in Amazon. It has been for the past, I guess, couple of years now. So it's not that hard to find. And also follow her on her Forbes column, which she writes almost probably about weekly now, right, Don?
I can't keep up with Jack. Jack definitely.
Jack, I joke around. He has a fury of blog posts. I mean, he's got one every hour just about now.
I feel like it. Yeah, it's pretty much, and they're great. So yeah.
Yeah. I'm very compulsive. Yeah, I'm obsessive compulsive, I guess.
That's how I found Jack, was through his Forbes column.
But but this is something, Dawn, you were talking about. Like, if you're going to do something, and this is why I agree so heartily with you, you got to focus and you have to do it. So like in my mind, I'm like, okay, if I'm going to do this and I really enjoy writing and I really want to move forward and maybe have a newsletter and do all this stuff, I got to do it. You know what I mean? So like on days that I don't feel like it or whatever, I just push myself. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I took advice even before you gave me this advice, but you're validating that to keep doing it.
Right. And Jack, people can find you at recruiter.io and of course your LinkedIn profile.
Yes.
People can find me at thevoiceofjobseekers.com and my LinkedIn profile. Thank you very much for joining us. We will be back next Wednesday at our regular time and for more job search advice. And if you want to engage us, you can continue on a thread or DM us. Thank you all very much for joining us. You all have a great day. Okay, we are